Christophe, I would just say the stage is yours. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Stefan. Is it working? Can you hear me? Yes, yes, yes. So thank you so much, Stefan. And it's always a challenge to take the floor after you. I'm not as good as you are for entertainment. So also waiting for Vanusia. I think she's coming, but for time constraint, we will go. So thanks again, Stefan, for the invitation. Thanks to the committee. Thanks to Dirk and Michel and all others. And let's start. Let's start then. So this is about the movements of coffee species and how it was key in the past and how it will be key in the future. So, okay. So why coffee genetics and variety matters first? This is just a kind reminder that we all know that, but it's good to have this in mind when we'll be looking at those movements of coffee. So cup quality is of course important, genetic resistance to diseases, and of course climate change. So Vanusia is there. Do you want me to stop now and then Vanusia, or we go to the? It's up to you. No, go. Okay. So I will continue. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's go. So we'll look at the past movements of Coffea arabica and Coffea canephora, and we looked at the movements to come for other coffee species. So let's start with Arabica. You all know, of course, that Arabica is originating from Ethiopia and also from Sudan. The first thing that happened is that in the 15th century, there were some few seeds that were brought to Yemen, and that's exactly where Coffea arabica was domesticated. In the early 18th century, some seeds were smuggled out of Yemen, first to India, and then to Southeast Asia. And then there was this big movement from Southeast Asia to Americas through Europa, which was the Typica movement, and that's how the Typica variety arrived in the Americas and kind of conquered the Americas. But then there was this other movement in the okay, where is it? There was this other movement from La Réunion Island, the French island. At the time, it was called the Bourbon Island. So that was the Bourbon movement that arrived to Brazil starting in 1850s, and then it replaced Typica because it is more robust than Typica, going up the north in the Americas. And then, interestingly, just nearby Ethiopia, but almost like 5 centuries after the first exit from Ethiopia, coffee arrived in Ethiopia. Arabica coffee arrived in Kenya and Tanzania. And I like to call this introduction in Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi as a melting pot. The melting pot because, in fact, they introduced seeds from all over the places where coffee had been before. So that's why even today, that's the place outside of Ethiopia where you can find most of the genetic diversity of Coffea arabica. Last but not least of those movements in the past, you have this tiny country, Timor-Leste, which is very famous for coffee people because that's where there was this interspecific natural cross between Arabica and Canephora, and that was the Timor hybrid. And this Timor hybrid was used all over the world, transiting through Portugal, to get some new cultivars. It is very important, when you talk about Arabica in the past, to notice that there was a very controlled, authorized Coffea arabica collection in Ethiopia in the 60s through 2 missions. One was the FAO mission, the other one was called the French Alstom mission. There was an official collection, and the genetic resources were sent in different germplasm collections, and one of them was Cartier in Costa Rica, still famous for access to the genetic resources collected in Ethiopia. So I think it's obvious the added value to the coffee sector of those movements is obvious. I mean, you have the South Yemeni land races, the domestication. They were for the coffee main endeavor for the past 5 or 6 centuries, they were crucial. Also, when you talk about cup quality, I mean, we all know that the Ethiopian land races were key. I mean, Gesha, of course, but also Chiroso, but also others. They are all Ethiopian land races that kind of escaped Ethiopia. The Timor hybrid. Without the Timor hybrid, we would not have a strong resistance to rust or coffee berry disease. So it's been so important. And when you talk about climate smart, I would like to mention the modern, what we call F1 hybrids. I'm sure you have heard of, but those F1 hybrids are crosses between Ethiopian land races and often Timor hybrid-derived cultivars, catimors, sarchimors, etc. So this is, again, so important. So for Arabica, what is remaining as untapped genetic resources for Arabica? Then we've got South Sudan. I mean, there is a very good paper by Sarada Krishnan and co-authors. I was part of them. She published that the genetics of South Sudan is very specific and different from Ethiopia. So it is very important to look at it. And then we have also identified some very unique, special genetic groups in northern Yemen. We call that group New Yemen. Harar genetic group has been untapped. And I would say that in Timor today, there are billions of Timor hybrids, billions. In the coffee breeding, we have used 4. So it might be a good idea also to get back to Timor, Leste, and see those remaining genetic diversity. I could not, it was obliged, compulsory to talk about Gesha. So Gesha, just to tell you that it's an escape from Ethiopia. It went out of Ethiopia in the 30s, then to Kenya, then to Tanzania. It was sent to Cartier in the 50s. Then it was sent, or it was brought to Panama in the 80s. Then you know the story, the Peterson family in the Finca Esmeralda, cupping, high prices. So now Gesha is going all over the world. So that's the kind of movement in the past, until recently, that we have observed. Let's go to Coffea canephora. Very much simpler, very simple. Canephora, what you can see on this map, the different colors are the different places where you can see different genetic groups. Each color is a genetic group in situ in Africa. It is very much simplified, but that's correct, in fact. That's you have in green, that's what we call the Guinean genetic group. It is in Côte d'Ivoire and Guinea. You've got in yellow, you've got what we call the Robusta genetic group. At least I call it like that to simplify things. In blue, we've got what we call the Conilon group. And in purple, we've got a small group called Nana in Cameroon and Central African Republic. So here what happened, importantly, there was a lot of those genetic resources in the 50s that were brought to Ivory Coast, where there was a very strong breeding program, and where there was a lot of crosses between Guineans and Robusta Guinean and Conilon. And there are a lot of very, very interesting cultivars in this country. But for cultivation around the world, really in Vietnam and in Asia, and in Mexico and Central America, it was really the Robusta group that traveled, mainly from Uganda. And then we had another very distinct movement to Brazil. And in fact, in Brazil, that's the Conilon that arrived in Brazil in the early 20th century, and now we know that even the Robusta in Brazil is called the Conilon. Okay? And pretty much that's it. That's it. So the movement of Coffea canephora in the world has not been as much as Arabica. So what are the challenges in canephora? Let's say today the main challenge should be cup quality, to improve the cup quality. So here, there is a need of research. There's a need of a lot of research when you compare to Arabica. We know much less what has been used or not used in the cultivars of Robusta. So we need to know much more. There's a need for research here. What about the other species? And now I'm turning to the movement to come, because we will see that those other Coffea species, they have not moved. They are in their natural habitat. So I will take time on this one slide. So here there is Romain Guyot and Aaron Davis in the room, so I hope they will agree with what I'm saying, because this is kind of adaptation of their work. So you know or you don't know that we have close to 130 species. Only 2 of them, 3 with Liberica, are used on a commercial basis. Those 130 approx species are divided by scientists in 5 big components. One is Mascara Coffea, from left to right, Mascara Coffea, Bara Coffea, Comor and Mascarenes, Coffea, Mozambique Coffea. You can see the importance here of Madagascar. Madagascar is hosting 67, more than half, of all the coffee species that are not used. So you can see the importance of Madagascar. The numbers that you can see on the top are the number of species in each section. The pie chart that you can see below is based on the categories of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, rating each species for the risk of extinction. So basically, the percentage that you can see is the percentage of species that are at risk. So you can see that for coffee, there is between 40 to more than 60% of coffee species that are at risk of extinction. If you look at the Coffea, the red one, it is where you can find the commercial species today. Arabica, canephora, even Liberica are in this section. You can see they are stretching from West Africa to Central Africa. Please have a look to the size of the bubbles and see Cameroon. Cameroon is hosting 16 species, 16 wild species. So we often talk about Ethiopia, rightly so, about Arabica, but we often forget that there are some countries, like Cameroon, Congo also, Democratic Republic of Congo also, hosting a lot of species. When we look at Mozambique Coffea, maybe you don't mind. I mean, that's normal in the coffee industry that you don't mind about it. Only that you've got 2 species, which are racemosa and zanguebariae, which are in this section that might be interesting for climate change, according to the work, namely of Aaron, for their resistance to climate change. And here you can see that, for example, Tanzania is a very important country. You've got 14 species over there. So the takeaway of this slide is to say that all the bubbles that you say, basically, to make it short, the coffee has not left their place of origin. So it means, and that will be some takeaways, it means that if we want to use those genetic resources for research and further commercial use one day to address the challenges, we will need to move those species, to exchange. And then, before, it was like open bar. I mean, you can take whatever the seed you want and bring them wherever you want. There's no problem. But now the time has changed, and there are some international rules and protocols, namely Cartagena for safety, phytosanitary safety, and also, very importantly, Nagoya, which is protecting the rights of the communities and the countries that are hosting the genetic diversity. So I will not insist. Sarada will tell more about it in this morning, but it is very, very important to have that in mind, that we will be able to use those genetic resources if and only if we are complying with international regulation. And there is a role of the science to precise what is under Nagoya or what is not under Nagoya. I mean, Catura is not under Nagoya, let's be clear. Okay? So, but stenophylla, racemosa might be under Nagoya. But we need to have a scientific basis to tell what is or what is not. And we need for the clear rules, and the governments hosting the genetic resources are the one putting the rules, giving conditions. You can take those genetic resources, but please you share with us the results of science. And if there is a commercial use, maybe we would like to have a monetary compensation. So this is just transparent negotiation. That's why international coffee bodies where governments or parties are really important. Really important. And that's why we had this Nagoya session yesterday. We were so pleased to have Vanusia with us, because here the International Coffee Organization is here to play a big, big role. And also yesterday there was the commissioner, representative, the commissioner for agriculture of the African Union with us. So it's a big subject. And of course, that may be the last word is about, of course, before we do everything we need, we shall preserve those genetic resources. So safeguarding those genetic resources is very important. So with that, I will stop here, and thank you for your attention. And now give the floor to you, Stefan, and to Vanusia. And I questioned after, or what?
Thank you so much, Christophe. Yeah, questions. So-called QQ, qualified questions.
There is one over there.
There's one, yes.
It might have happened in other places. That's the first part of the answer. But why in Timor? Because in fact there was Timor. You've got from the sea to the mountains. You've got like a gradient of altitude. So at one point there was a very vicinity or neighborhood between Coffea, canephora, Robusta, and Arabica. So the first reason why in Timor is that species were close together. The second is that very, very early in Timor, there was a huge pressure of the coffee leaf rust. Much more than, it was not in the Americas, it was not about the 70s that it started, rust. But rust was so important that it wiped out coffee Arabica coffee in most of Asia. So the pressure was so high that it was really visible. As soon as you got one tree out of 1 billion trees that is resistant to rust, you can see it, no problem. So that was, let's say, easy to spot. That's one reason, one of the reasons. Yeah. Yes, Enyo.
Wait, Enyo, we have the microphones. There's just Michel. Here's one, yeah. So there's 2 microphones in the room. There's more than that, but 2 that move. That's it.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Are all these species food grade, or can we use them as a food product or as a beverage?
I would say not yet. Or I mean, to answer this question, it is more of a question for the industry, in fact. I can answer this question from an agronomic point of view. From an agronomic point of view, no. Most of those species are not ready, I mean, to produce quantities at a reasonable cost of production. But now, to decide whether it is a product or not, to be drunk or to be, that's more of a question for the industry. But even Sirad, and Aaron also, I think you have made some cuppings. I mean, in the science have made some comparative cuppings, and I think that one of the species that was stenophylla was really similar to Arabica. Huh? It's like Bourbon. Huh? Okay. Exactly the same. So, okay. So you've got the answer in direct. So, but then it is really a decision, and also to know how we can, again, move this from, we can produce in the native habitat in the same country, but maybe in other countries also. So how this will happen is another question. I think also you, Romain, you told me yesterday also that there was, in fact, plenty of species that might be, no, not plenty, but some species that were really ready for coffee beverage. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And
okay.
We'll have
Thank
more questions in the break.
Okay.
Now, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.